King Charles just made the most unexpected royal move of the decade. It wasn't planned. It wasn't polished. It wasn't what anyone expected from the King of England. In a speech that left millions speechless, the monarch broke every royal norm, making a declaration so bold, so unfiltered, it's being compared to the most radical moments in British royal history. This wasn't ceremonial. It wasn't about tradition. This was about truth and transformation. Because with just a few words, Charles didn't just shake the monarchy. He shook the entire nation. And what he revealed has already begun rewriting royal history, splitting public opinion down the middle and igniting a firestorm of controversy, admiration, and fear. Let's dive into what happened, what Charles said, why he said it now, and how this single announcement might change the face of the British monarchy forever. Because once you hear what he said, you won't look at the crown the same way again. It started as a typical royal broadcast, a modest room at Clarence House, the Union Jack in the background, Charles seated, as composed as ever. The media was told it would be a brief national update. But there was something in his eyes. Tired, yes, but resolute. No pomp, no crown, no scepter, just the king, looking into the camera and within seconds, breaking tradition. He began not with national policy or ceremonial pleasantries, but with personal reflection, the loss of his mother, the shifting role of the monarchy, and the weight of a world that no longer worships the crown. It questions it. Then, with a calm voice, he dropped the first revelation. The monarchy as we know it is being dismantled. Charles didn't use the word abolish. He used the word transform. And the first step in that transformation? Downsizing. Effective immediately, the royal family would begin a process to drastically reduce its public-facing roles. No more bloated ceremonies. No more taxpayer-funded appearances for distant cousins with no constitutional significance. The royal household would be slashed to the bare core. Just the king, the queen, the direct heir, and their immediate families. Every other title. Under review, every allowance, frozen, every royal expense, audited, publicly. And then came the twist no one expected. King Charles announced he would be personally relinquishing control of multiple royal estates, starting with Balmoral and Sandringham. These wouldn't be transferred to William. They'd be turned over to national trust programs, converted into public resources, museums, environmental research centers, social housing projects. Charles said plainly, "The land must serve the people." This wasn't a gesture, it was a philosophy, one that echoed a deeper, more uncomfortable truth, one Charles admitted openly in the second half of his speech. He admitted the monarchy had become disconnected, that the institution he was born into had failed to adapt, failed to listen, failed to recognize the pain of its own people. And, in a move that silenced even the harshest royal critics, he apologized, not in vague terms, not with PR-crafted language, but with brutal honesty. "I have heard you," he said. "I have read your criticism. I have seen the anger, and you are right to feel let down." For a king to say that publicly, unprecedented. But Charles wasn't done. The speech then turned to succession. The room shifted. This was the moment royal watchers had speculated about for years. Would Charles speak of abdication? A quiet retirement? Would he follow in the footsteps of monarchs past and cling to the throne until death? He didn't. He shocked the world by proposing something entirely new. A dual monarchy. A system in which the crown would be shared, not in name, but in duty. Effective this year, Prince William would take over several core roles traditionally reserved for the reigning monarch: international diplomacy, Commonwealth affairs, domestic outreach. William wouldn't be just the heir apparent. He would be the co-head of state, with Charles. Not symbolic, constitutional, side-by-side leadership. It wasn't a demotion. It wasn't a transfer of power. It was a new model. One, born out of necessity, because Charles made something else very clear. The institution was no longer sustainable, not in its old form, not in its old voice. He said, "The world is younger, faster, and more connected than ever before. The monarchy must reflect that, or be left behind. He even referenced the recent rise in Republican sentiment. The growing number of Britons who say openly that the monarchy feels outdated, and rather than defend it, he agreed with them. But rather than abolish the system, he would rebuild it from the inside out. Backlash was immediate. Royal traditionalists were furious. Some senior members of the aristocracy reportedly walked out of private meetings the same day. MPs demanded emergency briefings. Social media descended into chaos. Some praised the move as heroic. Others called it dangerous. But through it all, Charles stayed silent. The announcement was his message. Nothing more. 3 days later, Buckingham Palace confirmed that formal legislation was being drafted. And here's where things got even stranger, that legislation. It would not only codify the dual monarchy, but would also strip dozens of royal titles from non-working royals. Princesses, dukes, baronesses, gone. No more royal privileges without constitutional responsibility. No more photo ops at the expense of the people. The monarchy would become a working institution, one accountable to the public, and perhaps even more shockingly, open to public review. Once a year, a citizen-elected council would evaluate the monarchy's budget, transparency, and performance. If the monarchy failed to meet the standards, the funding could be reduced, public duties reassigned. Even ceremonial roles eliminated. For the first time in modern history, the monarchy would be democratized, at least, in part. And then, King Charles did something no royal has ever done. He opened the floor to the people, a national survey. Online, open, anonymous. 3 questions. Should the monarchy continue? What should it look like, and how should it serve you? 1,000 years of royal history, suddenly open for public redesign? Critics say this is chaos, that Charles is unraveling the very institution he swore to protect. But supporters argue, this is the most honest, progressive, and courageous act ever made by a British monarch. They say Charles isn't destroying the crown. He's finally giving it meaning. Real meaning. As of now, nearly 15 million people have responded to the survey. Initial results: 72% support a modernized monarchy. 1% support a dual monarchy. 9% say the monarchy should end completely. But perhaps the most important number is this: 92% say this is the first time they've ever felt heard by the royal family. That statistic says everything. Inside the palace, sources say Charles has been meeting daily with historians, reformists, economists, and even anti-monarchist leaders, not to defend the crown, to understand how to reform it. This isn't cosmetic, this is constitutional surgery, and the surgeon is the king himself. As the days pass, more details are emerging. Prince William is reportedly preparing for a radical shift in his own duties, planning new digital platforms for civic engagement, youth leadership summits, and even a mobile People's Council that will tour the UK year-round. Charles, meanwhile, is pulling back from international travel entirely, focusing instead on home, on healing, on listening, and on preparing what might be the biggest twist yet. Because behind closed doors, one more card is being considered, and if it's played, it will change the monarchy forever. Sources suggest that King Charles is weighing the possibility of replacing the coronation oath. You heard that right. The sacred promise every monarch has made for centuries, an oath rooted in divine rule. And Christian authority may be rewritten, not to erase its tradition, but to reflect its evolution. The proposed change? A new oath. To the people, not just to God. To service, not just to reign. To unity, not just to empire. If that change is approved, it would signal the end of the old monarchy and the birth of something completely new. And that brings us here. A nation divided, a monarchy in free fall, or flight. A king who has spent his entire life waiting to lead, and is now leading in a way no one ever imagined. By changing everything, by questioning everything, and by risking everything. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about land, titles, or ceremonies. This is about identity, about what Britain is, what it stands for. And who it's becoming, and the next chapter, well, It might not have a throne at all.